Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk with you about the 5 new authors that intimidated me that I tried this year. Now, last year around this time I made a list of 5 authors I wanted to read in 2022, and these were all authors that I had my eyes on their books for a very long time, but I was always just a bit scared and worried to start reading them. They were intimidating to me and I would just, push it away from me. So I thought 2022 is the year where I read these authors. And so I chose 5 books to read. Those 5 were The Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Maurilier, The Assassin's Apprentice by Hobb, The Color of Magic by Pratchett, Kindred by Octavia Butler, and Beloved by Morrison. So these are the 5 books that I decided to go for, and I thought it would be interesting to now do a ranking and tell you whether these authors will, stay something I want to read more of, or whether I chose some authors where I probably won't read more of their books. So I'm gonna start with the 5th place, which for me personally was Juliette Maurilier. So I read The Daughter of the Forest, which is her, I think, most well-known book, the one that everybody keeps talking about. And this is a very, very long book. It is quite a hefty kind of historical fantasy book. And it's a fairy tale retelling of the how many was it? 6 swans, 7 swans, whatever. So that was a fairy tale that I was very familiar with from my childhood. And so having a retelling of that actually didn't really give me a lot of new information. The retelling was very close to what actually happened. We also get a love story in there, which I found very interesting because it's basically kind of like a love triangle with 2 brothers, so probably also a bit of fairy tale-esque. But one thing I didn't love about this book was that there is quite the explicit rape scene in there, and for me personally that is not enjoyable, and I luckily had read about it right before it happened in my audiobook, so I was prepared, but still I don't need that graphic detail, I'm sorry. Also, I didn't feel like it was dealt with super well, but that I think is personal taste a little bit. What I also didn't love about the book is the length. It was super long and it had no business being that long, I'm sorry. And then what I also did not really enjoy is the way that female suffering is portrayed in this story as, being our strengths. And I don't like this. Female people or like women or whatever have other strengths than suffering. And so I always get quite annoyed with these stories where female suffering is the strength. But yeah, if you don't mind all of these things, I think you will still really enjoy it, because this book has been very, very hyped. But it had also shown me that Juliette Maurilier is probably not the author for me. I gave the book 3 stars or 3.5 stars, and I don't plan on reading anything else by her for now. Then on the 4th place is the one that I thought would be on 1st place, and that was Beloved by Morrison. Now, I was actually quite surprised that I did not love this book more, but sometimes it's just not the right time to read a book, and I think that's kind of what happened to me here in this one. This is a book that deals with slavery times, with the times right after when Black people were free, whatever that meant, and that is also one of the questions that is posed here in this book. And yeah, this deals with a family, and especially a mother who's haunted by her past and the actions that she has done in the name of love. And that's kind of what this book deals with, the dangers and the toxicity of love as a potential. And I must say that I need more brain power than I currently have to really appreciate this book, to understand what's going on. The writing style is just a little bit too difficult for me personally, because English is not my first language. So I found that I really struggled with the writing style in the beginning of this book. Also the kind of intertwined nature of the past and the present storyline was a bit of a struggle at the beginning of the book for me. And yeah, I think if I reread this one day and I have a little bit more brain power to process and to really think about what's going on here, I could appreciate it more. But for now, I just felt very dumb reading this book, and I could totally see that I'm not getting what I'm supposed to be getting or understanding. So yeah. That's why this is more like a 3.75 star read for me, but unfortunately, yeah, not higher on the list. I do think that I will still try to read more Toni Morrison in the future, but I've also heard that, yeah, her books can be very challenging because of the kind of surreal aspects that she puts into her stories. On number 3, we have The Color of Magic by Terry Pratchett. This book I gave 4 stars, and I had so much fun with this story. Now, this is a book that is basically, it's the first book in the Discworld series, and a lot of people say that you're not supposed to start with this one, but I always found the Discworld to be so overwhelming that I decided, for me personally, it is just easier to read them in publication order. That's just one thing my brain can process, and so I started with The Color of Magic, and I really enjoyed this. Now, in this one, we are following 2 characters, and it's kind of funny because we have Rincewind as this magician. He has kind of like confused Gandalf vibes, and he's not like a super great magician. He's just trying to get by. But then one day he meets this other character who is basically a tourist, and he is there for all the magical adventure. He comes from a very organized normal world, and he wants to see like all this medieval fantasy goodness that is going on in Rincewind's world. And so the 2 pair up to kind of go on a tourist trip through this world, and I thought it was such a fun way to introduce this world and also make fun of fantasy tropes. We also, in the later half of the book, get a hero character who is portrayed in such a fun way. And we basically have 4 vignettes in this book where we follow these 2 characters on different adventures. And in the end, we do have the cliffhanger. So I already got the sequel to this, and I will definitely read it next year. As I said, 4 stars for me. It's such a fun introduction into this world. And since I heard that the first 2 books are quite weak compared to some of the others, I just can't wait to get further into the Discworld, and I will definitely continue reading Terry Pratchett. Then on the 4th spot, we have Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This book, is also the beginning of a very long series. This is the first book in the Realm of the Elderlings series, but this series is also broken up into smaller like trilogies and one, what do you call it when it's 4 books? I don't know. I'm blanking right now. But so it's similar to the Discworld, where you have these like smaller series in one big series. So Assassin's Apprentice follows our main character of Fitz, who is a child in this first book, and basically he is the bastard son of one of the princes of the world, and as that he is raised at court, but he's not raised as like the son of a prince. They're trying to find a use for him, and so he becomes the Assassin's Apprentice, hence the name. And I really enjoyed this book. Like, the beginning is a bit slow, but the ending was just so crazy. And what I absolutely adored about Robin Hobb's writing, which is immaculate, is the way that at the end you get this like whole big thing that is happening, but then when the ending is over and you're like, oh my god, what just happened? You realize that is actually not the ending of what most of the book set up. So there is still so much to like explore with this world for the later books, and I thought that was so genius, the way you don't even realize it until you're like sitting there and really thinking about what just happened. That yeah, the big plot did not get resolved at all with this first book, and that was really, really cool. So I will definitely continue on with this. I hope to read the rest of this first trilogy next year. So yeah, I will have that first trilogy wrapped up, and I'm very excited. So I gave this book 4 stars as well, I think, just to have some room for the books that supposedly get even better than this first book. But as I said, the whole ending, like the last, I don't know, 25% or even more, which is so explosive and fun, and yeah, I could not stop listening to the audiobook. And then you might have guessed it, but my number one of these authors was Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. This book, I was so happy that I loved it as much as I wanted to love it. And this one is basically kind of like a sci-fi. It's also a modern classic. And we are following a young woman, a young black woman in, I think, the 70s. Yeah, in the middle of the 70s. Who for some reason starts traveling back to slavery times, and she learns that one of her ancestors is actually a white slave owner. And it basically deals with the question whether she should save his life so that her family will actually exist. And this book was such a page turner. I thought it was so well done. I really loved it. And yeah, it's just horrible. Obviously, it deals with slavery times, and the whole idea of having this modern, if you consider the 70s like modern, but to have this modern young woman who also has a white partner and who lives with him in a very great relationship, go back to these horrible times and see it through a modern lens. I think that is such a smart move, and to also show how easy it is for her to slip into this role and kind of adapt to this horrible situation, even though she obviously does not want to do it, but it just happens. She kind of has to play along with the rules of that world. I think that is such an interesting exploration, and yeah, I think that the whole idea of this book is so unique, so great, and I had I don't want to say I had fun with this book, but it was an amazing experience exploring this book with our main character, who I also adored. I thought she was just great. And yeah, a very interesting book, also one I will probably reread at some point, because it is quite short and it packs such a punch. So I will definitely continue reading Octavia E. Butler. I have heard great things about her other books. There is this one trilogy that did not get finished, so it's only a duology now, but I've heard that that one is great as well, so I will definitely check that out in the future. So I think overall this was a very fun experience, an interesting experiment as well. And from these 5 authors I have tried this year, I want to continue definitely with 3 and probably with 1. So there was only 1 author that I kind of said goodbye to. And I think for them all being kind of intimidating authors, that is quite a good ratio, and I'm very happy with that. And so, yeah, I would love to hear what are authors that you are kind of intimidated by, but that you definitely want to read. I do have my list ready for next year, so I chose 5 new authors. I will let you know about that a little bit later in the year, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. So I will talk to you soon. Bye!